All right. So, our next review is going to be for another game in the RCU there, the Remedy Connected Universe. And it is going to be talking about what mug there that Sage had up there. So you play as Jesse Faden there, who's got a new job there. She's moving on up. And hello there, Nickel there. Hey, how's it going there? Very much appreciate it. Stopping by. So yeah, you play Jesse Faden here, who has a new job, and her new job is being the director of the Bureau of Control there. Which the Bureau of Control, basically think of your X Files or Fringe, or if you've ever seen any of those shows like that. Like their whole job is investigating paranormal activities that happen in the world of the Remedy universe there. They investigated Bright Falls after what happened in Alan Wake there. As Sage just said, the character in Alan Wake there that was the father of the sheriff there works for the Bureau of Control. And yeah, it's about kind of Jesse Faden kind of figuring out what is going on. There's a hiss, a basically an infection that is taking over this building in this bureau. And all this game takes place inside of this building of the Bureau of Investigation. You don't ever leave it, but don't worry, it's a pretty big kind of building there. There's a lot of stuff to see, a lot of different things to kind of venture around in this game here. So you're not going to feel very claustrophobic there. But there is kind of a little bit of a Metroidvania type thing where you do have to backtrack in terms of the game and kind of go back and look at other areas. You get new abilities that help you access areas that you couldn't access before. So there's that element there. But a lot of it is her taking over the role there. She has to figure out what happened to the past director who is dead. She has to fight this this infection. And then also on top of that, also kind of figure out a little bit. You learn about her past and her history, why she has the abilities that she has. And then what also happened to a family member of hers, her brother, that is also missing. Their Remedy loves missing people. They love missing people. They like that a lot. So I'm going to pass around. No name. What are your thoughts on Control?
Um, the Alan Wake one grabbed me, and it's the reason I played Control. But this is the one with so much meat to dig into. All of those files, all of those, different enemy types, different events, and still having such a character-driven story at the same time. That I just think it's phenomenal. Honestly, I there are not many. I don't know that there are many complaints I have after playing this game a few times. There were a few things that were struggle to find the first time, but once you get the feel of it, it's everything you want is right there.
And this game released in 2019. And then they did a free upgrade for people. So if you did buy the game there on PlayStation 4, if you downloaded it there just via digitally, you did have a chance to upgrade the game for PS5 there if you did that. So the PS5 version of it came out in 2021. So the PS5 version there, when they did kind of update it, include better kind of like ray tracing, things like that, but a little bit better graphics upgraded there with that. So if you did
frame rate improved a lot too.
Frame rate improved a lot. So yeah. Sage, what are your thoughts on Control?
Oh, yeah. Well, again, I'm just going to admit to being a little biased right out of the gate because I know I am. But Control, I think, is such an interesting game because leading up to the release of this, it was not marketed as here's the next game in the Remedy Connected Universe. Control was just marketed as a standalone game, and it wasn't until you got your hands on it and you started getting maybe halfway through or so, and you started to pick up a few documents, maybe find some secrets in there and go, oh, this is like acknowledging Alan Wake as part of this world. So, I'd say that like from Max Payne 1-2 to Alan Wake to Quantum Break, all of those games have ties and Easter eggs and little connections that are there if you're a big fan. But I would say that until this game, they did feel like they were just Easter eggs. this game felt like the first time Remedy came out and said, "Hey, no, it's actually a mission statement of ours that we are having a universe that is connected here between all of our stuff." It was the first time that you felt there was this actually very grand sense of scale to what was going on here. Because not only does this acknowledge stuff like the Dark Presence and the Dark Place in Alan Wake, but you have all sorts of other dimensions and types of creatures that you're dealing with in this game. The hiss is the primary one, but it is only one of a few different. And there's even suggestions of all these places you don't get to quite see, doorways you don't get a peek behind. And this game feels like it is setting up another 10 games worth of lore to kind of piggyback off of in the future. Um, and that's the kind of thing where, like, I remember when Iron Man 2 came out, and everybody was real worried if the MCU was going to work out after that one kind of dropped the ball a little bit. And it was like, do we really need all these setups and references that kind of took away from the story at hand? But I think Control is, again, an even more impressive game and story because it never feels like it's doing anything to set up other than itself. It feels like it is telling its own story. And then, yes, there's things in there that set up these other ideas and other story threads. Certainly Alan Wake 2, right? There's a lot of setup for Alan Wake 2. But within the context of playing Control, it still just feels like part of Control's story. And I think it does this really impressive balancing act of being able to kind of suggest that there's all this other stuff just past your view that you're not quite able to get a glimpse of quite yet, but it's coming. But what's in front of you is so satisfying that you don't feel like you're just having keys jingled in front of you as like a promise for something later. It's like the promise is being fulfilled right in front of you now.
Yeah. Yeah. So with this game, like you said, really gets into it. Like it's something, a little bit different compared to Alan Wake, the first Alan Wake game, where it felt more contained, there to this, and felt more about his story. I mean, this still is very contained too. And a lot of what this game kind of deals with is like, No Name was saying, a lot of, going through these buildings, going through these different offices, and reading the different files. Constantly Sage was telling me to read the files there in this game there of all, because it contains all this information, not only about the different creatures in this game, but about just the different, kind of things going on within the RCU there, the Remedy Connected Universe. There's points where you get into a situation where you go to a hotel, which seems to be like a midway point there of between the universes, and then traveling there acknowledges alternate universes, alternate kind of multiverses there. Everybody's the multiverse. Everybody knows what the multiverse is now, thanks to the MCU, thanks to various amounts of other projects there. So it kind of gets into a lot of that stuff with this. So it does a very good job at that. So like you said, it doesn't feel like it's just throwing out Easter eggs. It's something you got to really work for and get into if you want that, especially then, like we talked about before with Alan Wake. The DLC with this is also something that adds on to it more, that it's like you want to go out and play the DLC, and this does have DLC, the Foundation and AWE there with that as well, which again, very fairly cheap if people want to pick up the DLC and the game as well. It's very, very cheap right now. And like I said, this game came out in 2019, and then just recently they did announce a sequel is coming for this game. No footage, no story, anything like that yet. Still very early.
There's one piece of concept art.
One piece of concept art there. That's it. So, but they did announce that for this. And if people saw during the trailer I played for the Ultimate Edition is where you can get everything bundled all together there, which I heard some people were kind of upset about the Ultimate Edition when it kind of came out there. I think of the way the pricing was, or some of you familiar with that? A little people were upset about the Ultimate Edition.
I honestly don't remember any complaints. Seeing any of them personally, with the exception that there was a few alternate costumes and a side mission, which actually included Hideo Kojima doing narration, that was released with the PS4 version of the game. That was not on Xbox at all, and then even the PS5 Ultimate Edition also omitted that stuff, even though it was like exclusive to the PS4 version. So there's like a tiny bit of little missing content there that's like only on the pre-gen PS4 version. But they did recently announce there was going to be an update coming out sometime next year, and I think it's adding all of that extra stuff back in. So there's even going to be like another side mission, like in 2025 for this game.
Okay. So I didn't hear about the Kojima thing there. So that's very cool that they kind of added
It's like
that
some
there.
weird narration, and you've got to like follow these like sound clue-based clues around to find something with. I don't know exactly, but
Okay. Is this it? Right? So this is, it says here, Control, Easter egg there, guided tour with Hideo Kojima there.
that is
Okay.
it.
Let me
I
see.
don't know exactly what it fully entails.
So let me see if he. Hmm. Doesn't look like it.
新地点
Oh, there you go.
始めましょう Welcome to my guided imagery experience. Lesson 1. 森との Exercise 1. The forest of
And I didn't even
different
do this
grass.
part of the game. So, I mean, it's pretty big. It's so much stuff to collect, so many different audio tapes, so many different files to read. I mean, it's pretty massive there. Even with me playing this game, I think it played it for about I'd say close to 20 hours there of this game, maybe 10, 15 hours of it.
I think you might have been longer because just your last stream was 9 hours by itself.
Yeah, because I
You
played
did
it.
like
Yeah,
5 or 6 streams.
yeah. Because I did. Yeah, I beat the main game, and then I went on to do the 2 DLCs there. So Sage was with me through all of that.
I honestly think you might have been closer to 30 or 35 hours.
Oh, okay. I gotta check. Maybe I'll check the PS5 there. How long I played it there. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot to do here, and we mentioned before with Alan Wake there how that combat was pretty poor in the way it was handled, but that's not the case here with Control. I mean, the combat in here very fluid, very fun. Like I said, the character in this with Jessie has special abilities. She has telekinesis, so she can move things with her mind. She also has this gun, which can morph into kind of different shapes and turn into different kind of weapons. There's like a grenade launcher type weapon that's there. The base weapon is just your standard kind of pistol shooter, kind of like there that she has. Out of all the different variety types of the weapons, the standard weapon is probably the best at all. I found that I just went with that one. The weapon that charges up, that's trash. I don't know. Don't even use that one. That's pointless. But yeah, I mean, but just mixing the different abilities there with the combination of the telekinesis and the gun was really fun. How'd you feel about the combat in this, Noname?
I absolutely loved it. I think there was similar to you. There's one fight I tried that charge weapon. I think there was one other that I brought it back for, but I almost never used it. But maybe there are people who that worked for. I was just trying to describe it to people at the time, and I was talking about like some of the controls, and some of it felt like the controls could map to like a Star Wars game, like Jedi powers. With the way her telekinesis works, felt very sort of force powers type thing. But the uniqueness of her different abilities, the different weapon types, and all of the combinations of that just keeps it interesting the whole time.
And there's a skill tree, so you can upgrade the abilities there. Like you said, very much, yeah, very Jedi kind of like there. And the more you kind of go throughout the game, the more powerful you get. Yeah, when you get that flying ability, I mean, that's even cooler. I mean, that's even more impressive when you actually do
You
that.
even get like a superhero landing.
Superhero landing, yeah, that's really cool. So the combat in this is really fantastic, I think, and really matches the great story on this. Combat, what do you think about it there, Say?
I think this is the best set of combat mechanics that Remedy has ever done so far, and that's including over Alan Wake 2. Because and again, it's not even a criticism of Alan Wake 2. Different style of game, right? It's just going for something else. But even over that game, I think this is the most fun to play game Remedy has ever done. I think they've always been great at their storytelling. That's not new, although I do think it kind of takes a level up here as well. But just in terms of how fluid, how fun, how much variety there is, and it's also not always that all the time either. Like say Alan Wake 1 is. There's a good variety in here. There are some minor puzzles that you can kind of do. There's some platforming even at times that they throw in there to kind of break it up. And then, of course, just the exploring and all the things you can find there. But the combat here, there's just so much to it. I mean, like, there's a one side mission that I suggested ignoring just for the sake of you being able to do the whole story on the stream. Is there's an arcade machine in the AWE DLC area that basically lets you just do like a kind of like basically infinite combat arena type thing. And I would just do that. Like, I'll just turn the game on and sit and play that because I think there's just so much fun and there's so many options with it. I mean, and then just speaking of like the way that the gun works too, being able to shapeshift into all these different things. I use the shotgun and the machine gun a lot for that. I like to switch between those two. But just to even lightly tap on, because it's related to the gun and the combat, just to lightly tap on the Jungian psychology and all the archetype stuff. Second you walk in the door, there's a document. I think it's the first one you read. Is any object representative of an archetype is not allowed in this building. And so they right away they're setting these things up, and then I think the second document you read basically tells you that the service weapon that you've picked up, the shape-shifting gun, essentially was at one point Mjolnir. It was at one point Excalibur. It is the archetype of a weapon. And so that, kind of Alan Wake does a lot of stuff about archetypes in that first game. But I think that's ballooned and explored even more and even further here, where, we're dealing with even the weapon that you have in the game is representative of like the archetype of weapons throughout all of storytelling.
Yeah. And there are boss battles in this game. So yeah, I struggled with one of them. I was on that boss for a while there, and
So that's the hardest one.
Got
or
through it.
second hardest.
But there are some really interesting and fun boss fights in this. Play them there. That's very good. All these enemy types that you face. There's also game variety there, and then especially when they mix them all.
Sorry, you cut out for just a second there.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? I'm good now. A little bit.
Now you're good.
Okay, yeah. All these different enemy types in the game that you have there, especially when they all come at you in waves, makes the game very challenging. So there's no difficulty setting with this game. It's just one difficulty there that's just throughout the whole game. So you don't get to pick hard or more, easier there. It's just one standard difficulty a little bit.
In the options menu, there is some stuff that you can mess with. You can kind of turn up and down how much damage you and the enemies do to each other. You can also turn on invincibility, one-hit kills. So you can, like, if you're someone that does struggle, like, with games and you really just want to have fun and see a story and not struggle at all. I mean, I know at least one person who was like, ooh, now I can play the game because I don't have to worry about that. So that option is there for people who maybe just don't play games a lot and maybe aren't used to, especially in a game like this where there are some genuinely very challenging moments. Like, I could see someone who's not a very experienced game player giving up even at some of those junctions or some of those boss fights. So there are those options in there just to make it more accessible to people overall. But in terms of traditional difficulty settings, no, there's not any other option there.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you mentioned with kind of messing around with the settings there that you can kind of do that with there to make it a little bit more of an easier experience there for the player.
And they do that in Alan Wake too as well.
Yeah. But I mean, if you just want to also just like I said, have a little bit of easier time there with the settings and just enjoy the story. I think the story is also very interesting and fascinating. It gets with this one, I think, more science fiction, more that which I kind of appreciated there.
I think it's an interesting lens because I think it's just as paranormal as the first Alan Wake is, but it's a scientific organization trying to force paranormal stuff into a scientific understanding and to try and like categorize it as science, even though it isn't. So it's almost like this fusion of this like fully paranormal and then like sci-fi genre. It's this kind of weird conglomerate of them.
I think there's even a document at one point of someone complaining about how much Darling is making up his own bullshit terminology and saying, this is what we're calling it now. And they're like, this isn't science. This is, and that might have been in
Alan Wake.
In Alan Wake 2, one of the DLCs. But either way, like in universe, they acknowledge that like they're trying to force this into a bubble that it doesn't quite fit in. But also like it feeling more sci-fi, like as opposed to horror, you're dealing with the same sort of things that are potentially frightening, but you can do so much more about it as Jesse as opposed to Alan versus the darkness.
Yeah, and this
You
is
have that power.
I'll play a little bit of this. This is like one of the videotapes you can pick up there. So you pick up audio tapes, you pick up videotapes there, these reels that you can kind of play there that it further talks about the story of the game, explains different things in the game. It seems like with this one, they're playing the one where he's explaining the AWE, which is acronym from Altered World Event. So it kind of explains. So let's play a little bit of this.
These forces gravitate toward archetypal objects, a gun, a television, a supposedly haunted house. So clearly humanity affects this process. Our collective unconscious is a map of sorts. We hold the key, but we don't know how to use it. We create these archetypes through everyday life, popular culture, urban legends, but we are observing and influencing a complicated system in action. We can change the likelihood of something being a receptacle for these forces just by thinking about it. But we haven't found a method to control the outcome.
Control the outcome. There you go. That's like the name of the thing in the game. Yeah.
And that is Matthew Peretta playing that character there, Dr. Casper Darling. And Matthew Peretta is also the voice of Alan Wake. Alan Wake is two characters, right? You got somebody else as the body. But then that voice actor is fully playing this Casper Darling character here. And I know that they actually went and they filmed all of those tapes with him in like one day. Like they made this set, and they brought him out there, and there's like a couple lab coat like assistants that don't have lines in some of the videos. But they really do just like, it's just like basically him in front of a camera, and they just filmed all of these videos in a row. Some people, like if you're not a big video game player, you might even recognize Matthew Peretta as he was Will Scarlet in Robin Hood Men in Tights way back in the day.
Totally. I never caught that.
And then there's a lot of stuff like that in these games too, where you have actors playing, even though it's one universe, they kind of slip in and out of multiple roles. I mentioned on a different video, the Alan Wake review from earlier, we did James McCaffrey was the voice of Max Payne, and then he voices Tom Zane the Diver in the first Alan Wake game. But here he's director Zachariah Trench. It's again that same character. Or Courtney Hope, who plays Jesse, was also Beth Wilder in Quantum Break. And so you start to really see these, I guess the term variance has really kind of permeated popular culture because the Loki series. But you really kind of start to see some of these characters as almost variants of each other in some interesting ways. There's even, a boss fight where Jessie has to fight like a mirror version of herself. And it's all of her dialogue is backwards. But one of her lines is, "I'm wilder than you." And the same character was Beth Wilder in a different game. So there's some great stuff in the sense of how they reuse actors. And that just goes to show, too, when it comes to Remedy's writing and storytelling and roles that they give people, and that's also just the way that they treat the voice actors that are at the studio. Clearly they must treat these people well and respectfully, because every single person keeps coming back. You know how long it took? Almost 10 years. Sean Ashmore was begging to be in another Remedy game after Quantum Break. He was begging to come back.
And to connect, talking about Quantum Break and the clip we saw of Darling, Quantum Break was the first time we heard AWE specifically. I don't remember if they officially defined it as Altered World Event in that or not. But it's in the spray paint in the background on the walls and stuff everywhere.
Yeah, it's all over Quantum Break. Yeah. They don't say Altered World Event, but you do see AWE graffitied all over the game. There's even like a Alan Wake 2 proof of concept trailer hidden inside that. And years before Control came out, there's a chalkboard you come across very early on in Quantum Break, and it basically breaks down the entire idea of Campbell's monomyth and makes a bunch of references to the lore in Control, like, 4 years before Control came out, before they even started developing Control as a concept.
Sam Lake is always thinking long game, and just looking at everything he does. He always, like, each game is a standalone, but they point to each other. They say, hey, if you like this, here's a little hint, here's a little nod towards something that you're also gonna like.
This was highly praised when it came out there. Like I said, played the Ultimate Edition trailer there. People, Game of the Year, got some of those kind of spots there for that. So yeah,
My personal game of the year that year.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can look up what games were there in 2019. What were kind of the big ones there?
I've got the list pulled up already, actually. So Devil May Cry 5, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, Death Stranding came out that year, Disco Elysium came out that year, Devotion, which that people might not know that one as much, but there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. I played Tale Innocence, that was super highly critically praised. Tons of Apex Legends launched that year. There's a ton of very popular stuff.
Yeah. And sales wise, this did better than Alan Wake did, so it did have that kind of going for it. So it kind of performed much better there. It is available on a lot of consoles there, on Steam, on Mac, even OS, so you can get it there as well. I highly recommend checking out this game if you haven't already played it.
And the budget was only $30 million.
30
which for a video game of this type, a lot of these games are 100, 150, $200 million budgets. That's Spider-Man 2 game from last year was like almost $300 million, $330 million budget for that game. And Control is like a longer game than that even. And they did that on $30 million. Even Alan Wake 2, which was a little bigger, was only $50 million. So like Remedy also knows how to do a lot with the assets that they have. And that's another thing too. You can really point at the way they build things. So like if you go back and you kind of look at Quantum Break's gameplay after playing Control, you can kind of see how it's a little bit of a prototype almost for the way that Control feels to move around. And it's not quite as smooth as Control. You can tell they're just still kind of putting it together. But you can feel that it is like a prototype for Control in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And this sold 4.5 million units as of November 2024. So that's how many units sold there. So final thoughts. Right in there for Control there, Sage.
So yeah, I mean, I'm this one. Love all the story, and the gameplay is on par with how great the storytelling is. This one is a even I'd say much more fully rounded experience overall than say something like the first Alan Wake game. And I go for a full This Is Cinema with this one. It was my game of the year it came out. I love everything really about this. One of the only complaints I even really did hear from people was like the map that in the game is kind of unhelpful. But I honestly like the way that that's designed because I think it is intentionally trying to force you to use the landmarks that you're physically seeing in the environment to navigate rather than having your map out all the time and just moving around based on that. And so I really appreciate that because it's kind of creating a more tactile sense of exploration. And yeah, I mean, just everything here. I think Jesse's a great character. We didn't even touch on like Ati and like the supporting cast of this game, but there's so much great stuff there. So many great characters from Marshall to Emily Pope, your kind of assistant scientist character too. Someone like Casper Darling, who Jesse never physically interacts with in the game, and that he's purely in these live action cutscenes. And yet he has an entire character arc that plays out across this multimedia expression within the game's structure. And I think this is, and I think Alan Wake 2, I think even more so than this, but I think this is where you really start to see that multimedia sense of creation really starting to stretch its legs and grow. And you feel like, oh, I'm getting like a reading experience, and I'm getting like a film experience, and I'm getting this like audio experience, like all these things wrapped together. I think, yeah, no one is doing things like what Remedy's doing. Uh, yeah, This Is Cinema. Ashtray Maze is one of the greatest moments in any video game ever made.
What say you there, None?
I'm in the same boat, and again, will reiterate what Sage said at the start. Like, I'm absolutely coming in biased. Like, I have a hard time criticizing anything Remedy does, but I'd forgotten about the map thing. I do remember feeling that, but yeah, once you're in there, it does add a level of immersion. Looking at the signs on the walls and stuff, gonna be a This Is Cinema for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there is the map. Yeah, I mean, you'd probably just be better off just looking at the signs. They'll help you better than I think what the map can. If you had to point out maybe one of the issues with the game, maybe that's it right there. But really innovative, fun combat. The boss fights are really good, really creative boss fights. They're visually stunning game there that they have here. A lot of really gorgeous visuals there. You have great character work here with Jesse, and then like with the game and more stuff getting revealed throughout it and just going through all the kind of stuff there. And I didn't even go through all of the things, but all the videotapes, all the documents there of learning about the Bureau of Control there, trying to figure out like this rivalry and this beef that happened between these different figures and members of the bureau. You get that story backlash there. You even get some office tea. There's an office romance. You get that in there if you're into that. So there's that comes up. So that's really great with that. I think a lot. So it does a great job of immersing you in this world and wanting to see more of this world and of the Remedy connected universe. I think it does a fantastic job of that, and I can't wait to see what they do for a sequel here with Control 2. And they also, I mean, to kind of tide you over until Control 2 comes out, they do have a three-player cooperative first-person shooter coming out called FBC Firebreak there, which is basically the SWAT team, I guess you would say, of the Bureau of Control there.
Yeah, some of those field agents.
Yeah, some of the grunts, I guess you could say, of the department there, who kind of come in. So yeah, yeah, and it kind of leaves off there. And some good kind of costume designs you can do there. You can swap out Jesse's costume with some different stuff. We saw that in one of the videos I played there. A very kind of I guess Samus type looking suit there, or Eon Flux type looking suit that you can do there. So it's different things.
Personally, I like her Sith robes the best.
Yeah, the Sith robes you can do. Let me see if I can pull up that there with that one.
You get that from the mirror fight.
So
That's it's like
Message.
strips of cloth, kind of. Yeah,
Yep,
that
she's
was
got,
the one
like,
I played most of it in. The one thing I'll say about that costume is if you're turning a lot, the physics on those robe flaps get a little
They
weird.
like move inside the character model and stuff.
Yeah, and I had one that just like kind of stayed out at one point for a while.
Let me see here. Yeah, you get that during the mirror fight, which is pretty good there.
I believe it's called Synchronicity.
Yep,
Uh,
synchronicity.
yeah, so yeah, you get a lot of different cool kind of costumes there, and the side missions of this game are really good too. It makes you really want to play some of the different side missions as well with this. Like I said, the interesting with Ati there is he a god? Is he kind of what's going on there with that? So that's also very interesting that you have there. So this is the Sith looking kind of costume that you have there that she has, so you can get that there. That even makes her look more like a Jedi. So you got that kind of stuff. But yeah, so yeah, two cinemas there. I give it a very high peak there for me for Control. I love this. So this was technically the very first RCU game I played there. Before I played Alan Wake, I played this one and then moved on to Alan Wake. Now I kind of want to go on Alan Wake 2. Maybe I'll get that Alan Wake 2 there and play that on stream and finish that out.
I'll be there.
And Saga, yeah, because I really want to. I'm interested in the Saga character. I'm interested to see her, and then maybe
She's
if
great.
she's going to show up there. Is there any spoiler stuff you want to discuss with Control and maybe the future of Control and stuff?
I think there's definitely some stuff we could get into. I held off on saying too much about that before, but there's a lot going on here. So there's in terms of how it relates to Alan Wake, and then there's kind of what Control seems to be setting itself up for like its own future sequel. But I mean, first, just to kind of address, the Alan Wake elephants in the room here. You kind of are keyed into this idea that he might be kind of responsible for a lot of what's going on, maybe the entirety of this situation. I will say it is very firmly kind of established, especially in Alan Wake 2. He can't just create something from nothing. Like he can't. These characters are not fictional characters that he created. They are real people that really exist outside of him. But there is, this way he can kind of nudge people and kind of take things that do exist, and as long as the story he writes rings true to the reality of how people would behave and interact, he can kind of push things together. And at one point in particular, he says during a narration in this game, "Cut the fat, be blunt." He's really describing this different writing style, and he even says, "Hey, I've tried all these things to get myself out of this place. I'll do anything. I'll even try a Daedalus poem." And the chanting that the hiss is doing, kind of across the entire game, you're always hearing these whispers in the background. There's, even the hiss that you're not physically fighting. There's hiss hanging around in the air, and they're all doing this chant. And it seems very strongly implied that Alan Wake wrote that chant. So the idea that the hiss could break into this, reality in this building and possess people in the first place seems to be a byproduct of Alan Wake interfering with what's going on here. And there's a lot of that set up for Alan Wake 2 here. All of that stuff with Dr. Hartman having been kind of mutated by multiple forces, and that big boss fight that you mentioned earlier, Josh. All of that, there's a lot of story, a lot of stuff being set up for Alan Wake 2. Once you get to play that, you'll really see how all that connects. But then to flip it and just go with what Control is really setting up for the future, I think, one of the really interesting things here is and then you also had this in Alan Wake 2 as well, which is really kind of teeing up Control. But as Control goes along, and it really comes to a head in the Foundation DLC, but how much you can trust the board. We didn't really mention that too much in the review, but like you get in there, you pick up the service weapon, right away you are being communicated with by this thing, this inverted black pyramid in the astral plane dimension. And I mean, obviously, right away, it's like, all right, this thing doesn't seem trustworthy. This is weird. This is clearly deceptive in some way. And then you fight the former creature, and I mean, he just names the former member of the board. That's really pushed in the Foundation. There's a conflict between these entities that's being set up. And then on top of that, you also have all these hints at the Blessed Organization, which. Is that connected to the board? Is that connected to the former? I don't know, but there's clearly some black market paranormal object cult leader out there named Chester Bless that the game is also setting up. So are all those things going to be Control 2 story? I don't even know at this point. Those could be for other games even. But I do feel like there being this conflict between Jesse, the board, and whatever entities are inside this thing. Like that is, I think, 100% being set up for the future of Control's narrative. And how does Jesse deal with the fact that, yeah, she's the director, but there's still this literal group of like alien creatures or supernatural creatures that still have some sense of ownership over this place and ownership over this organization. I'll even just throw one of my own little theories that I've come up with out there. But in the Foundation DLC, you find these cave paintings that it's like people worshiping the board, and then worshiping the former as well in different spots. And if you listen to all the audio recordings down there, the first FBC kind of researchers that were exploring the Foundation, they carbon date the cave paintings, and they say, oh, these cave paintings are actually got down here after we did. They're actually brand new, but they look like they're from like the Mesozoic era. So it really kind of seems to imply that the board, and again, there's all the stuff with symbols and the collective unconscious and humanity kind of associating power with these things. It seems to me that the board faked these cave paintings to try and trick the FBC into putting its symbolism all over their organization and therefore kind of worshiping it. The whole organization and its origins seem to be a farce of some kind being pushed by these whatever these creatures really are. And that's the other question is what are the things that are making up the board, right? Like the former is a giant spindly spider thing with one eye. Are all the other things that are in the board that type of creature? Are they different types of creatures? Are some of them more human? Is Tom Zane the real leader of the board? I don't know. It could be anything. It could be absolutely anything.
To jump off of, you're talking about the little bit of, especially at the end, that antagonism between, or not quite antagonism, but the mistrust between Jessie and the board. When you get her director costume at the end, so their symbol is that inverted black triangle. Her hair clip is a right side up triangle.
And
that happening,
the ocean view is a right side up triangle too. Yeah,
so like putting her as this potentially, setting her against that visually, but also, together you see a couple times or implied like that it makes an hourglass where that director figure is the recipient of what is coming off the board. And at least that is the board's intention. And so like their sort of unreliable narrator about the whole universe gets really interesting in the deep dive, and you have to question kind of anything anybody says in the whole game, because everyone has their own subtle motivations. Even the videos from Casper Darling are, that's his interpretation or that's his view of it, but is he really getting the right information? Is he trying to, you mentioned the beef between him and Trench, like how much are they each manipulating their own documents, things like that. So there are all these internal struggles that are completely almost separate from the narrative.
And that's the thing about this game. After I beat it, I was looking up tons of YouTube videos about all the explanations for things and deep diving, and then you can go really deep in a rabbit hole about all this different stuff, different characters, different meanings of different things there, the inverted triangles, the members of the board, these different creatures there, Ati, what he's doing there, what's his place is there. So a lot of stuff to really deep dive, and I think that even makes the game even more impressive there with that. So that's also another great thing about it. You can still be talking about it years later about all the different things.
And I'll never shut up about it.
We have an almost constant stream of theories going on.
So very, very great stuff there. Sequel is coming, and I will definitely be there for that sequel whenever it comes out. Very, very great. I hope it is just as great as this game, if not better. So you guys gave it This Is Cinema for Control. I gave it a high peak there. Very nice. So that
definitely play American Nightmare before Alan Wake 2.
Okay. Play American Nightmare before Alan Wake 2. So that was Control.